stage where I suppose installation has been complete, and we're at the snagging issues process. So I'm just going to pass over to Dan to talk us through the typical snags that could come up, and then how then to work your way through them and find the solution for that. So over to you, Dan.
Yeah, perfect, Owen, thank you. So as you were saying, we're just walking through then. So this is a scenario that FieldSmart's been installed and the agent's going through and double checking that everything's working. So one of the main reports that we would use is the BCAN report via the portal, and this gives us all information regarding to the FieldSmart solution sold. So I suppose the first one that we'd most commonly see there is that the BCAN report isn't working itself. So one of the main examples for that would be the squirrel device isn't connected to the right CAN wires for the vehicle. And as I say, the solution for that would be go through the squirrel installation guides, which I'll dip out and show you here now. And we're just looking to confirm that the CAN location is right, and what's known as the high and low CAN wires are connected in the correct place. They're fastened through a data click itself. So I'll go into the squirrel documents themselves. As I say, it's in the NIBC support docs, Cubo products, and under squirrel. So example for this, I'll pick, it's usually a heavy commercial vehicle, and I'll just talk through the document where we're looking to see the bits and bobs there. So if I pick, for example, DAF LF, this document will take us through to the wiring for that vehicle. So the CAN wires, as I say, is the CAN bus here. And in this example, we've got blue and yellow wires, and the blue should be connected towards the CAN high of the CAN clip, and the yellow should be connected to the bottom. Without this connection, it's not reading the right information from the truck, so we're not going to parse that information to our site. So if this was the example vehicle and we discovered it was on the wrong CAN wires, we would take a quick snippet of this document and we would resend that a booking request to the engineer. And then when he's on site, at least he has something to refer to for this make, model, and year, you know?
Yeah.
So that would be the main resolution to that sort of scenario. And if I just get my document up here again, another sort of issue would be then the DCF or the file that powers that squirrel device isn't correct for that make, model, and year as well. So it is a slightly different document, and we're going to look in the same place as we had looked before. We're basically checking that the file that we have preloaded on that box is correct for that make, model, and year. 90% of the ones we would find is a DAP or trucks DCF, but you might have the 10% there. Usually Volvos, Mercedes, and Ivecos would be a slightly different file that we need to preload on the box. So again, we are going in, and in the event that we know that possibly, okay, we sent out a DAS DCF and it actually needs to be for a Mercedes, we would go here to our squirrel supported vehicle list, and we would open this up. And we would go navigate depending on what type of vehicle it was. So we'll have a look at heavy commercial vehicles for this example. And we'll scroll down, and I believe on page 7 would be the main one, which is a Volvo. So if we take any of the examples here, we can see there, as I say, across the Volvo, this is your DCF group. And in this example, to be fair, it is a trucks. But again, this is the location you're going to see what the make and model is, what year it is, and what the correct DCF would be. Unfortunately, if an engineer went out to site and installed a squirrel with the wrong DCF, there's no way for us to over the air or remotely command that unit. Right. So it would be a case of getting a service unit within the stores, preparing it physically through iUpload, and then sending it out with the engineer to rebook them in.
Right.
So
it will be a complete change of device there. There's no way.
Unfortunately,
take out the old one, put in the new one. Okay.
It is indeed. It's about one of the only devices currently that we can't over the air command on. So it's a case of getting a new device and sending it to the engineer, rebooking, and then when he's on site, someone preferably at the other side of the phone ready to test that with him, you know. Another issue then causing the report to not come through would be the configuration on the CalAmp. As we know, CalAmp's the only unit that has a SIM in it, and it's what's actually speaking and corresponding this information to our website. So to double check this, we actually have to get the IMEI of the CalAmp and check that it's on the right configuration. There's certain files that we can use outside of this FieldSmart configuration, so we want to make sure it's one of the compatible ones. So I'll pull a IMEI here from our stock list, and I'll show where we go to check the configuration there. Let me see. So I'm just grabbing any CalAmp IMEI, and we're just double checking that this is set up in the right way. So the software that we use to configure this is known as CTC, and It's just as normal where we configure stock as it comes into the building and when it leaves per job. But in this example, I'm just going to punch in the IMEI and search it. And this is a blank unit, to be fair, but what we're looking for then would be what configuration is on this device. Typically, it would be set as a basic unit on 1.0. This wouldn't read the files, so we need to change it, as it says in the document there, to something around 11 point something. And that's how we then get the configuration to speak to the Squirrel unit, you know.
Okay.
So this is where we would do that, and it would be a case of just amending the configuration, and then it should then come through and show the BCAN report on our portal.
Okay, so that can be done remotely, that solution?
Can indeed, Owen, yeah.
Yeah.
So this could be the engineer's left site. We can just change the configuration. The next time the unit drives, it will speak to the box and say, I need to be changing to a different configuration then. And then lastly, another reason we commonly see then everything could be correct in terms of the configuration on the unit. The engineer could have installed it on the right CAN wires and we could have the right DCF on the Squirrel file. But if we don't have what's known as the firmware setup on our back office to be this CALAMP plus Squirrel EOF driver ID, our site doesn't know to receive that information. So in this instance, as I say, everything seems to be grand and the agents work through the checklist. Basically, the last thing we would check then is our back office system. So if I go in here and under tracking unit itself, I'll use the same example IMEI we had there before and search it. What we'll be looking for is the firmware section here. So you can see this is actually currently set up as a basic CALAMP.
Yeah.
We would need to then go in and edit this device, search it under the firmware section, which would be here. And we drop it down and select CALAMP Squirrel EOF driver ID. As I say, this is the only one we should use to get a FieldSmart solution. So it's quite a simple fix. Once this is changed, all the reports will start flowing through historically then, you know.
Yeah, very good.
So that's the main common reasons then, as I say, the BCAN report wouldn't show itself. But then there are a few other sort of snags that we have there on the list. We have no fuel level. So this screenshot here is of the BCAN report. And the main factors that people are looking for is the odometer as well as the fuel level. So if the fuel level doesn't seem to come through, Owen, there's basically one or two solutions that we can think of there to fix it. So the first, again, would be checking that there's no extra what's known as a data click. So before we've seen the green wires with the CAN high and low, a data click is exactly the same, except it's reading a slightly different set of CAN wires in the vehicle itself. So on the main CAN, if fuel level isn't shown, we basically have to find a different sort of device to then pick up the fuel level from a slightly different part of the vehicle.
Right.
So I'll show you then, as I say, the example we had there was going into the Squirrel supported documents. And I believe one of them that we had there typically would be a Volvo. So if we look at this Volvo FH and we scroll across on the right-hand side, there's a small key up there which I'll show you. But anything indicating usually a purple or blue or yellow is indicating that there's a secondary CAN bus function on that vehicle. Right. So if I scroll up to the top, we have three different types of CAN bus connections that'll also read fuel level and a few other bits and bobs. So the purple there is known as a ID 180 to ourselves. The yellow would be known as an ID 190. And then there's the blue, which is known as a J1708. They would be the three main sort of colors that we're looking for. And when we go across on the right, we'll have all the headers there and it'll give us the fuel level, whether we require that or not. Okay. So if it has been that the end or the agent's testing the install and they notice that there's a secondary CAN bus required, they'll basically go through this matrix, find the make and model and see if there's anything under this column. And they'll send out to the engineer with another booking request that there's a separate 180 or 280 or whatever it needs to be. And the engineer will go and connect that to the vehicle, should then get that fuel level flowing through in our reports as intended.
Yeah.
And another one then that would commonly come across for the fuel level is quite simply that the vehicle doesn't broadcast fuel level for us to pick up. So unfortunately, there's no fix to that. It is per the manufacturer or the vehicle type.
Okay.
So
okay.
All we are looking for is the agent to confirm that it doesn't support it, is again going into this fuel matrix and just double checking that it's not supported at all. Right. So that would be the likes of the example here for the Volkswagen. If we go across there to the fuel level, it's given us the key that it requires a sensor device, so it doesn't come factory fitted with this.
Right.
I suppose we can either advise the customer that you're not going to get fuel level, or show them where they could go to get a fuel level sensor, and then we'll start picking up that information for them.
Very good. Okay, so certain brands, certain models will just not have that without doing an extra sensor device. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't come factory fitted, basically. I think
Okay.
more legacy vehicles, obviously now with technology, there's a few more coming as standard, you know.
Okay.
So that would be the fuel level side of things. And then the final sort of snag that we're looking on is the driver ID. So with fuel smart solutions, as well as the odometer and fuel level and CO2 and other bits and pieces, they can also read live information from the driver. So multiple drivers might be driving one truck. They want to identify obviously harsh brakes, acceleration, fuel consumption per driver.
Yeah.
So this is where we would get that information. Now, unfortunately, with the driver ID, or to be honest, there's only really one solution, and this is via the back of the tacho head itself. So our solution, as I say, reads all this information from the cam wires itself, and then what we're looking to get driver information from is the tacho head.
Right.
So there's no real go-to document for this, Owen. It's a standard sort of installation practice. So I've pulled an example vehicle here. This is the back of the tacho head that's been disconnected. And the plug here, I've been advised, there's the white one, which is an A plug, B for yellow, C for red, and then D is brown. And you can see the arrow pointed across there. This is the 8th pin within that D plug, and that's where all the driver information is sent from. So if the engineer simply hasn't wired it to the D plug, we're never going to get that information through. So it's a simple case of advising the engineer to go back and wire to the pin D8 of the tacho head, and that driver information would then flow through in our VCAN report.
Very good.
And it's as simple as that. As I say, they would be the main sort of fuel smart snags there for us all.
Okay, excellent. Dan, I'm just going to stop recording.